Are you ready? Can Crushers. It don't really get no better than this the podcast that you're looking for if you're really heavy into wrestling. Hosted by the Mark. Energy that's so amazing. Gotta keep it entertaining. Rep the Can Crusher Nation. Yeah, you know what's going down in the ring. Lights out when you hit a ding ding. Knock 'em out like boom bada bing. Hold it down, you can crown me the king. Got a shout out to the Miz and Duke the Dumpster. We choke slamming everybody. Power driving, hit 'em with a face buster. Yeah, this the show you need and it ain't no need for waiting. Mark, hold it down for the Can Crusher Nation. All about wrestling and keep it entertaining. Can Crushers Wrestling Podcast. Time to break 'em, let's go. Yeah, Can Crushers. Yeah, Can Crushers. Let's go.
Hey, this is Jumpin' Jim Brunzell, and my favorite podcast is Can Crushers. It should be yours, too.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to another Can Crushers Wrestling podcast. I am your host, Mark the Mark Martinez, and this week is a very special Can Crushers Spotlight because we're going to be talking to the man that the tournament in Red Bank, Tennessee this Saturday is named after, a legend in professional wrestling. Because I'm not ruining it anymore. I'm not ruining it anymore. You need to wait to get it from his mouth. Mr. Shawn Shultz. We have connected. We are set to go. We're going to tell you everything about the tournament. We're going to dive into Shawn's career. We're going to learn that for nearly 20 years, he's traveled up and down, in and out, over and under, everywhere in the professional wrestling business, and what he has done for it. Because this, my friend, is going to be an awesome podcast. I have so many questions. I'm just going to sit back and listen to him talk about the wealth of knowledge that's going to come out of his mouth about professional wrestling, because I am still a Mark no matter what. And he's got an MF tournament named after him now to help better the kids of the future. So I'm going to sit back, listen to Mr. Shawn Shultz. You know what? You need to sit back and listen to one thing, though, too. You need to listen that, hey, check out our description, because we have our WWE affiliate code. If you're looking for the new LA Knight shirt, the new Becky Lynch shirt, the whatever shirt that you know you want to shop on WWEshop.com, click on our link in the description, because, and we're very transparent on here, sometimes you'll get a discount, sometimes you won't. But you'll always support Can Crushers. And that's awesome. You know you're going to spend the $40 to $50 or whatever. Click on that link, because then we get a little kickback and it helps. It helps pay the bills and stuff like that. Also in the description, hey, if you love the show and you really want to look amazing, better than wearing a Becky Lynch shirt or better than wearing a Roman Reigns shirt, check on our store. We have Can Crusher merch. You can get a hoodie, you can get a t-shirt, you can get a long sleeve. It's getting hot out. You can be rocking the tank if you want to. Check out Crowd Made in our Can Crusher store, and that will also be awesome. Guys, I am super excited to have Shawn Shultz on. So sit back, be prepared, and listen to the interview.
Yes, sir. This is B. Brian Blair asking you to turn into the Can Crushers podcast, or you're going to get stung.
Welcome back to Can Crushers, guys. You heard how excited I was to talk to this legend. And yes, I know he might say something, but legend on the phone. 17 years in the business, up and down the road, all over. And one of the reasons your ass needs to be in Red Bank, Tennessee this weekend, it is my pleasure to have Mr. Shawn Shultz on the podcast. Shawn, how are you doing?
Oh man, what an interest! Legend is definitely a stretch. My kids will laugh if they heard you say that. But I'm doing great. Mark, how are you?
I'm wonderful. And Shawn, I know you say that, but we've talked to Tyler T.Y. Sutton, and you know your name has been brought up a few times. You're linked to a lot in wrestling. As much as you know, I'm one that doesn't like compliments either. So I understand, but you're linked to a lot. There's a lot of wrestlers out there that have ties to you. So I've done my work a little bit on this one. You're a legend, dude. So thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you, man. I'm blessed. Is all I've been. I just, I didn't obviously reach where I wanted to go as a kid, but man, I got to do what I dreamed of my entire life. So I just feel so blessed.
And if the kids don't like it, hey, at least it's a listen for the podcast because you're going to make them listen to it a couple times. And I'm kidding.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, I get it. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of why you're on here to talk about the second annual Shawn Shultz Future Tournament, which I'm so stoked for, I don't know if you've heard my pick already, right? You've heard my pick?
I haven't.
I picked AJ Black right off the bat. Yeah. But you know why? It's the AWA ties that he has in his family and everything. He won me over instantly on that podcast.
Gotcha.
Instantly, yeah.
Yeah, man. A ton of potential there, man. All these guys do. They all have a ton of potential. I don't know if I have a pick. I'm just excited to watch it all unfold.
I don't know if you should have a pick, but we'll get to that. Let's rewind to when you were a little guy. Who introduced you to professional wrestling? How'd you find it? Mom, Dad, Uncle Joe, Aunt Sally? Like, how'd you find wrestling?
It's funny. Like, my earliest memories, my cousins from Nashville area, they'd come down and they would talk about it just a little bit, just briefly. And then, like, my sisters and everybody would say stuff like, oh, it's fake. And then my dad was watching it one day, and he was never, like, a real big fan, but he was watching it. And I remember, like, I started paying attention because I was like, what do you mean this is fake? And I kind of wanted to see, what it was all about. And it was Hulk Hogan and Earthquake. And I remember watching it, and Earthquake started doing the stomp around, and kind of fitting, right? He just went into the Hall of Fame. But he started doing the stomp around, and I remember I felt myself, and I was probably like 5, 6, something like that. But I felt myself like get anxious, and I was leaning forward, and I was watching the screen. And I was just like, "No, move!" And that was like the first time I remember anything from the screen like sucking me in like that, and I was hooked from that point forward.
That is a great memory because as you were saying it, I might be a little bit older than you, not by many, maybe like 4 or 5 years or something like that, but I just replayed all that in my head right now. I can tell you that I was with my grandfather watching that, and my grandfather, you used the F word, fake, and wow, okay, right. But my grandfather, to this, I mean, he's been passed for many years, but you could say fake to him, and he'd punch you in the face, and he's like, that's not fake, because he's Bruno Sammartino. Yeah.
I'll be completely honest, Mark. I'm a very relaxed person, but like if somebody says fake, like it's one of those things. It's like obviously people come up, it's predetermined. We understand that, but like that seems kind of negative. It seems kind of insulting.
Yeah,
especially when my friends and myself and we get up out of bed and it hurts a little bit, and not that I want to pat on the back or anybody tell me, hey, good job, but I also don't want anybody to insult what I spent 20 years, beating myself up to do.
Right. So that's your first memory, Hogan and Earthquake, by the way. That's yes. Great. What about some of your favorites growing? Clearly you were a Hogan fan then, right?
Not that much, really. Oh. He's the one that first grabbed me in. But after that, like I took to I really liked Mr. Perfect. And honestly, it's because, like, my mom said he was nice looking.
I think that's
why my mom was watching wrestling, and I was like, cool, he's cool then, but him, and then then I obviously fell in love with who he was as a performer. Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, I was in that middle 90s there, was like, oh man, these guys are incredible. And Bret Hart was just cool. It was just so cool. So Bret and Shawn, of course, Mr. Perfect. I was a really big Warrior fan when I was small. And of course, when everybody gets older, right. Like, but man, dude had it. Like, he had such a charisma. He sucked us all in, right? Like, he snorted and spit all over the screen, but I was with it, man.
How many times, as you were a little guy, did you tie tassels around your biceps and run around like a raging lunatic? Did you do that like I did? Oh, my gosh.
I did. Yes, I did. I cut up a T-shirt and got in trouble for cutting up a T-shirt and making tassels out of it so I could run around and jump off the couch.
Yeah. Were you? I'm revealing all my secrets to see if you agree with them. Did you use your mom's makeup to put it on like Warrior because lipstick is hard as hell to come off around the eyes. I don't know if you know that.
No, we had a stash of like Halloween decorations and stuff in the garage, so I would go out there and get the Halloween makeup out and do that.
Yeah, don't use the lipstick. I still might have some under the eye. You said your mom was a fan of Mr. Perfect, and essentially that's why I think I like Magnum TA, because my mom was a big fan of him.
Yeah, I think fan might be a stretch, but she just noticed him as she was walking by, you know, and I was marking out.
That's good. I get it, yeah. So, growing up, wrestling was always in and around your childhood. What else did you do, though? You know, athlete in school, drama, anything like that? Because they all tie into wrestling.
Yeah, Mark, I'm going to be honest with you, man. I probably have some undiagnosed issues. I kind of laser focus on things. So, like, after I saw Hogan and Quake, and I was like, that's what I want to do, that was it. That's all I concentrated on. I played football in middle school. But, you know, just because my friend was kind of thing. But my focus was on wrestling. Like, I started working a job at 15 to start getting money together. My plan at that time was to go – Mr. Fuji had a school in Knoxville. And I was living in Oak Ridge growing up, which is right outside of Knoxville, Tennessee there. And Oak Ridge is where the atomic bomb was built. Actually.
Oh, wow.
Fact.
History lesson on Can Crushers this week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the whole Manhattan Project and all that, where I grew up. The Simpsons mentioned Oak Ridge a lot on their show when Homer was working at the nuclear plant.
Yep.
All right. I digress.
No, that's all right.
Well, that was the idea, was to go to Fuji School. And I knew it was running. And at that time, I didn't know him yet, but who became my best friend, Shane Andrews, was training with Fuji at the time. And then my mom realized how serious I was, because I'd worked a job and I'd saved up a couple grand to make sure that I, you know, had enough to get there. And she had talked to one of her friends at work, and this lady knew Jason Benjamin. And Jason Benjamin was working for Ron Fuller and Robert Fuller in Knoxville for K-Town SmackDown at the time, and actually had got signed by the WWE for a developmental contract, but they hadn't even seen him wrestle. The dude is just magnificent looking, to be honest with you. Like, my mom was like, hey, my friend knows this guy, you should talk to him. And honestly, like, I thought, you know, it was going to be the regular independent guy, probably wearing some overalls or something, you know, and I'd go humor my mom because she cared enough to ask somebody. But then I talked to the guy, and he's like, hey, you know, stop by the fire hall. I work in the fire hall over here. I'm actually in Oak Ridge. And I was like, oh, cool. So I went over and met him, and I was 17 at the time, and we sat. And, like, when he came to the door, he walked up. He had crutches because he broke his leg. And like, he's like 6'4", this blonde, long, curly hair, the most, like, you know, blinding blue eyes you could ever see, an incredible physique. And I was like, oh my God.
Who the hell is this guy? Yeah.
And he's like, come on in, man. And we sat and talked for a while. And he had told me then, he was like, I don't think I'm going to do this much longer. He's like, I broke my leg. I'm really more into, like, acting and that kind of stuff. So I don't think I'm going to really do this a whole lot longer, but I would love for you to meet the guy that trained me. He was like, I've heard that Fuji isn't real consistent right now and possibly closing the doors, and I'd hate for you to waste your money that you've worked so hard for. And I was like, oh, well, thank you so much. So he put me in contact with a guy named Scott Wilcox, who had done you know, a little bit just indie stuff and a little bit of Georgia Championship back in the day, just as like an enhancement guy, but knew the basics, was really great, was very honest with me, said, hey, I'll teach you the basics, man. After that, it's up to you. And so he taught me the bare basics, bare minimum kind of stuff, which was the agreement. And, you know, he didn't, you know, he gave me a fair price, and it was really a great experience. And from there, he introduced me to a couple indie promotions in the area, and I started doing that. And before my 10th match ever, I was blessed enough to do a show with Tracy Smothers. And I pulled up in the parking lot for the show that day, and I look over, he gets out of his car, you know, and you know, I'm a lifelong hardcore fan, you know. And I look over and Tracy Smothers gets out of his car and I'm like, oh my God, there's Freddie Joe Floyd.
Instantly marking out.
Right, and so like, I'm thinking to myself, he wasn't there very long. Maybe I shouldn't call him Freddie Joe Floyd. And so I walk over to him and I just introduce myself, and he starts talking to me and just, man, salt of the earth guy. And I was just like, oh my God, this guy's so cool. And so I go up to him before my match, and like I said, I hadn't even had 10 full matches yet. And I was like, Mr. Smothers, would you mind to watch my match, please? And please give me any feedback. And he's like, yeah, I'll watch every match. And I think I worked, gosh, I can't even remember who I worked with that night. But I just remember afterwards, like I came back, and he was still sitting at the curtain, and he actually watched. And at that point, that was like the first guy I'd met that had been somewhere, I just went over to thanks so much. And he was like, hey, kid, you do pretty good. What do you do? And I thought he was asking me about what I do in wrestling, So I was like, oh, I'm pretty new, so just the basics. And he's like, no, kid. Hey, Shawn, what do you do for a living? What do you do for a job? I was like, oh, I work at a grocery store. And he was like, can you take a week off? And I was like, probably, yeah. I get along with everybody there. He's like, where do you live? And I said, I live with my parents. And he goes, how far is it from here? This show was I think it was in La Follette, Tennessee, I believe, if I remember correctly. And I was like, oh, it's pretty close. It was La Follette, Lake City, something like that. It was like 45 minutes away from Oak Ridge, so it wasn't far. And I told him, and he's like, I'll follow you. So he actually, I called my job. I took a week off. He followed me back to Oak Ridge, and I left my car. And I didn't come home for 3 weeks.
The night you just blew my mind. The night meeting Tracy Smothers, you're jumping in. Nothing against the man; he's another legend. Yada. You're jumping in the car and just living with him for 3 weeks.
Well, I just went on the road and I told my mom. At that point, I had turned 18. I started when I was 17. I had turned 18 at that point, so I started, and then so I just told mom, hey, this is what I'm gonna do. It's Tracy Smothers.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
And she was like, okay, honey, just stay in contact, and my parents always very supportive and beautiful people. And so I went, yeah, and man, it sounds like bullshit.
No.
But that dude paid for all the gas. That dude paid for anything if I needed pictures, he paid for it. If I didn't sell anything that night, he paid for everything. He paid for where we stayed. He paid for all the gas. He paid for all the food. And he taught me along the way. He just talked. And man, as crazy as that sounds, there are 150 other wrestlers walking around right now with that exact same story.
That's
how that man had the time to impact the amount of people he impacted in the beautifully positive way that he did, man. Tracy Smothers, we all call him Pops. He will always be a father figure to me, man. And that guy helped shape me as a man, not just as a wrestler. And just the phone calls and the time on the road, and then him and me and Chase Stevens and Chris Michaels, and God, dude, I could cry just talking about that. But Tracy Smothers is the best, is the moral of the story.
See? Son, these are the stories. This is why this podcast exists, because of this. And it's just, I've always loved Tracy from everything that he's always done. I love his daughter. They've just always been engulfed in my life as a little guy. I remember them and I just continue to follow them. And now to hear that, I just want more Tracy Smothers in my life, because I know you now and I know how he's impacted your life, because you just said you're going to cry about this story, and I'm over here tearing up because this is awesome. This is unfreaking believable. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, man. It's just, I hope all the young guys, I wish all the young guys today could get I don't know if there's Ricky Morton's the last guy.
Yeah.
He's the last one out there teaching everyone, man. Of course, Booker T and all those guys, they do a great job helping guys when they go do indie shows. But, Ricky's regularly out there. Yeah. And man, when I was coming up, it was such a blessing. It's funny. Tony Lucchesio, Danny Deals at NWA is one of my closest friends, and like I probably wouldn't be standing here if it wasn't for that guy. But we talk all the time. Like because he managed me in wrestling, but he managed me in real life too. But we talk about it all the time that it was the dark ages of the independents. So we would be in like DeSoto, Illinois, in front of 1,400 people. But the only people that knew that were the 1,400 people there. You know, the internet wasn't really that big. Yeah, it was a thing, but there wasn't all this independent wrestling coverage. The talent wasn't what it is now. You know, you would have a spattering of guys that kind of could do it all. You know, you have Sal Rinauro in Georgia. I was the Tennessee guy. You had Mark Sterling in the Midwest there. You'd have Vic Delicious and Hal Collins in the Northeast, you know, but like there wasn't an abundance of that. It was just like kind of a spattering of guys here and there. But you would do these shows and you would have guys like Dr. Tom and Ricky Morton and Bobby Eaton and Tracy Smothers and, you know, like Dustin Rhodes would show up from time to time. Dusty Rhodes would show up from time to time. The King would be there. Like you would have all these events happening on a regular basis. And I was working like 5 to 6 nights a week regularly when Tony and I were together from like 2008 to 2012. And like, but nobody knew.
Yeah.
So it's like it's weird to look back and go, "Whoa, what a blessing we got to have all these guys!" But like nobody knew we did. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, in a business that you want everybody to kind of know what you're doing, it wasn't the best time, but it was the best time.
In fact, until about 15 years ago, roughly what you're saying, maybe even a little bit longer, dude. We didn't know about the Pittsburgh wrestling scene. As we were talking off air, we were talking about where I live and everything, and I'm 3 hours away from Pittsburgh. Everybody knows that. But, like, that's only 3 hours. I make that trip daily, weekly, monthly, whatever. I didn't know independent wrestling was right there. I knew about the NWA, WCW, blah, 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 you know, we can regurgitate all of those. I didn't know that Sterling James Keenan, which is now Corey Graves, was wrestling in Pittsburgh. I didn't know that CM Punk was coming through there before CM Punk came through there. You know, I'm like, holy crap. So I get it. I get the dark ages of independent wrestling.
You know, it's funny. Like I wrestled one time. This is always one of my favorite stories to tell. Me and Chase Stevens and Andy Douglas, the Naturals. Chase was also trained by Tracy. So we were on the road with Tracy all the time at that time. I moved up to Nashville, so me and Chase were right beside each other. Andy, God bless him, man. He's the best. He's got his life together. He's a chiropractor in Franklin there and just killing it, doing a great job. Looks incredible, great shape, awesome. But Andy was like, you know, at that time, you never knew where Andy was. But we were doing a show. And we were doing a regular loop with Smothers, and then he had just sent us like addresses. And at that time, you know, he wrote it down and handed it to us. And we had MapQuest directions printed out.
Oh God, I remember
so Andy's driving, I'm in the back seat, Chase is in the passenger seat, and we're like trying to find this address that Tracy gave us, and we're, you know, regular pay, so we didn't think anything other than just a regular kind of show. We're like, and we passed this like dump yard 2 or 3 times. And we pass it, we're like, man, this is where the directions is taking us. It's here, but it can't be at a dump. No, the show was actually in the middle of a legitimate dump.
Oh, my
It
God.
was actually where the trash was taken for this town. Legitimate. And the ring was in the middle, like circled up with all this trash. And like Smothers was on the show, and I got paid like at that time it was probably, you know, I don't even remember how much it was, but at the time it was like a decent thing for my day for what I was getting paid at the time. So I knew Smothers was getting, you know, 5 times that, and we're at a real dump. And I'm like, this is weird. And Chase is like, I don't want to put my gear on, bro. I'm like, I know, I mean, either, man. Like, what are we doing? And then he's like, we made it, you know, and he's pissed or whatever. But, man, just now it's a hilarious memory. But at the time, we're all like, what are we doing? You know, but that's what Tracy did, man. He would just find shows everywhere and get us paid and take care of us.
Listen, as a garbage man / you know, town worker and everything, I've been to dumps before. And did they lay out like carpeting for you guys to walk on? Like you were walking through the trash.
Yeah, they had some carpet, and they had some like cut up carpet for like the entrance way or whatever, and like around the ring, so if anybody fell out, they didn't land on garbage.
Oh,
but that was it.
In the middle of a freaking landfill. That is.
Yeah.
That's a great
Chairs
segue.
Sitting around.
Go ahead.
Chairs sitting around, like sitting on top of, people are like off balance because there's like garbage underneath one of the legs of the chair.
I'm not saying this mean. How many people were there?
That's, probably like 12. That's too. It's like, how are we getting paid?
Yeah.
Like, what is happening?
That's a great segue because I was going to just say you've been up and down the road close to 20 years in the business, ROH, NWA, OVW, TNA, and a litany of others. Can you give us any stories about like ROH? Because I'm going to throw some names out that people know, and this was just me doing quick. Manswarner, Ethan Page, Ricochet, a hometown boy our own of DJZ, Joaquin Wilde now. Like, you've been in and around, you shared the ring with all these names, plus, Tracy and da-da-da-da. Do you have a story for each? I mean, we could do this for 3 hours, I'm sure, Shawn. I'm sure we could. But do you have anything that really stands out of, like, ROH or NWA or OVW or,
Ring of Honor, that was Jerry. Jerry made that come true for me, Jerry Lynn. I was living in Nashville at the time, and so was Jerry, and I was actually living with Jerry, I think at that time. My daughter and I, and then Jerry and his wife Pam, just beautiful people, man. They allowed my daughter and I to stay there, live with them, and then their daughter Annabelle is just a year younger than my daughter Madison. So Jerry and I would, walk around Kroger with our daughters in the front of our buggies, and everybody would think we looked like a really sweet couple. But with my bleach blonde hair at the time and his long hair and all that. But Jerry they were doing Ring of Honor at the municipal little building there in Nashville, and Jerry was working Nigel. And I'd already told him, I said, man, I want to be there. I want to see that. And he's like, yeah, I'll see if I can get you there. And so then he like calls me like a week later. He's like, hey, you're going to wrestle on that Ring of Honor show. I was like, for real, man? And so he got me on, which is awesome. And it was really cool because nobody really knew. And I was staying pretty busy in the area at that time. Bert Prentice, Mike Porter, they were running Nashville regularly, Rena Riggins. So I was hitting all those shows regularly. A lot of people from the East Tennessee area where I grew up and was raised, came up to see the show, but nobody knew I was coming. And, I have my ridiculous music, and it's one of my favorite memories ever for me because Kerry Silken walked up and I had my robe on that said, everybody knows. And he just looked at me. He was like, everybody knows, huh? And just messing around, joking around. And I said, oh yeah, joking back. And then my music hit and it got a really great reaction. Probably one of the better reactions I've ever got. And it was just, just so humbling for me. But at the time, Kerry was standing right there. I looked at him and said, see, everybody knows, and we joked about that. But, it was just a cool thing for me because there's so much incredible talent there at the time, like friggin' Seth Rollins and Cesaro and friggin' Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. And they were all there. Nigel, Jerry, like all these guys, just all this incredible talent was there. And I got this really great reaction. And that was the first time I wrestled a ninja at Ring of Honor. I wrestled a lot of ninjas.
Yeah.
At Ring of Honor, thanks to Adam Pearce. But that was the first one. And it was one of the trainees there. I think the Lyrics was training him. I did a great job. Can't remember his name, but it was great. We had a really fun little, 6-minute opener thing. And it was just a blast there. Adam Pearce is a class act, dude. I'm so glad that he got where he got, and man, just such a great guy. I always have to say this about the guys I've worked with that are really well known now. Ethan Page is phenomenal.
He loves my son, by the way. We met him in Pittsburgh. Him and Ethan just because they share the same name, and they both fell in love with each other. Yeah, my son's name is Ethan as well, and they just gushed over each other because those were like the only Ethans in the whole crowd that night. And I'm like, oh my God, get a room.
That dude, like, so when I first, I worked for AIW a few times in the past with Crimson. He was close with John Thorne, and so got to go up there. Just man, one of the coolest things, I got to get up there and be there before Chandler Biggins passed away, and just man, that guy. So that was at a time in my life that I was pretty bitter. I was pretty upset about not being where I wanted to be, and I really had got on in my own way. I hadn't found Jesus at that time. I didn't realize that he was in my life. I hadn't allowed him in at that time. I was just in a really bad place, and so I had got to go up to AIW because John Thorne and I had spoken. I just said, "Hey, man, I need to do something different. Do you guys have a spot for me?" And he was like, "Dude, Chandler has been begging for me to call you." And so I got to get up there, and Chandler Biggins, Chris Bryan, is just sorry. He is like the way he loved all of us is enough to make any injury worth it. Like that, the way he was just so in love with wrestling. He was so in love with the fans. He was so in love with the guys. And he was just so, it's just, man, his heart was just beautiful. Him and John Thorne in AIW, like that last year, my in ring time, I was able to have just the best time there with them. And a lot of it was because I got to do a story and work with Ethan Page, and that guy is so good. And he was just so much fun, and we had such a great time, and I made so many friends there. Everybody was just, oh man, if people, you're in the Pennsylvania area, I'm sure you've heard of Absolute Intense Wrestling in Cleveland, Ohio.
Yep.
If people haven't heard of it, check it out, man. That show never disappoints. They always have top talent on it. John Thorne understands his audience.
He does.
And just the greatest time. And I'm so glad that is where it got to end. All those guys up there are just so cool. I think Gringo Loco is incredible.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen that guy?
We have. Yeah,
he's insane.
Yeah, he made his way to IWC where Britt Baker, the one that I was talking about, where Britt Baker, Wardlow, CM Punk have all kind of trickled through.
Yeah,
he did some stuff there too. Unbelievable.
Man.
Yeah.
Like, the first time I got to work with him there, it was just so funny because he was looking at me. He's like, "Man, we can do this and that." And I was like, "Brother,
right?
I'm Memphis Exhibition. Okay, I'll drop down and you can duck a clothesline. All right, like I can't do all that." You know? And I was like looking at him like, "You can do that?" And we got to work because I hadn't got a chance to watch him yet. And then the next time it was him and his partner, Crazy Train. They were doing the Crazy Train thing against Colin Delaney and Cheech.
Yep.
And man, it was just, Colin is the best.
Colin's unbelievable too.
Oh man, he's so fun. He's the best guy. He actually, he's a doctor. I don't know if you know that or not.
Yeah.
He's a doctor.
Yeah, he as well. He made his way through IWC for a long time. Yeah.
Hey, listen, Colin Delaney is a doctor. Like, he is an MD.
Yeah.
He one time I had this severe pinched nerve in my neck. It just debilitated me for like 3 weeks. But I had my first match booked with Colin, and I really wanted to do it. So I was like, "Hey, man, that dude's been around forever. He'll be able to protect me." So I just tell him before the match, I'm like, "Hey, man, I got this little pinched nerve thing going on in my neck. Just be careful." Of course he did. But the first time he gives me a headlock takeover, my neck pops, and I'm fixed. I'm healed.
Mid-match.
He's a doctor.
Right.
The beginning of the match.
Yeah.
He's a freaking doctor, man. Colin Delaney. Yeah. Wrestling, he's really great at it, but I think he should have been a doctor.
Yeah. All right, let's pause from wrestling a little bit. Find out a little nerd stuff. It was subtle, but you said it, and I always grab it. I'm glad you found the Lord. I'm all for that. You know, if I lose, if people are like, "Oh no, here it comes," I don't care, because you're right, man. That's a number one thing in the world. It's taken many people a long time, but thank you for sharing that you did, because without him, this podcast isn't here. We're not here. So praise
It's all
God.
his. It's all his. He just lets us borrow it.
For real. That's the best way I've ever heard it said. It is. It's all his. So thank you for saying that.
Man, he just like, I look back and man, he's so good, right? Because it happened exactly how it should have for me.
Yeah.
We fight it. I grew up. My father's a preacher now. He wasn't when I was a child, but his dad was. My mom's dad was. I didn't get to meet my mom's dad. He passed before I was born. But very spiritual family, and just but Southern Baptist. And my dad is a preacher, but he's not. I don't put him. I love the teaching, and I'm not. And if anybody gets Jesus out of anybody teaching in any way, amen.
Right.
But for me, I like kind of a lesson plan laid out and teaching so I can kind of grasp it. And Southern Baptist wasn't that way, right? And when you're a child, you're not really supposed to ask questions about it, because then it's like you're questioning Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, so for me, it was hard for me to connect because I'm a skeptic in all ways. I'm very like, I want you to prove it, everything, prove it. I got to see it. And so I rebelled for a long time, and I think, as a young guy, I got mixed up the confidence and the passion and drive and the self-assuredness that you had to have to chase a dream and try to be an athlete. I got that confused. I didn't get confused. I had it wrong, and I was completely wrong in how it should be, because nothing that I've ever experienced was something that I could have got alone anyways. And now that I look back, it's just like, oh my God. And the way it happened for me was, it was 2 years ago. So it's not been a whole long time. On Father's Day, my wife had been on me about going, and she was just questioning how I got turned away. And she grew up very similar, Southern Baptist home, and everybody in her family was preachers, and also had a lot of questions. But she was on me. She's like, go, just open your heart, open your mind. And so I did, just like everybody that has an opinion. I go and I cross my arms and sit back in the chair there in the church, and I'm like, all right, prove it. That real bad attitude.
Yep.
And I go a few times, and then finally, I think it's like the fourth time we go together, a gentleman named Mark Hartman gets on the stage, and he didn't look like what I was used to people looking like in church. And Mark is speaking, and he says that he had convinced himself that to chase his dream, that he had to be bad at everything else in life. That if he was going to be good enough at music, that he had to be terrible at everything else, including his marriage, and including being a father, and most importantly, including being a follower of Jesus. That he had, in his head, subconsciously, he had told himself that he had to be bad at all of those things to be good enough to be a musician and a celebrity as a musician. And I heard that, and I go, oh, wow, that sounds familiar.
Mm-hmm.
So I start listening. And I go, okay, what's this guy got to say? And then he continues to tell me how once he finally stopped chasing everything that he thought he was doing right and just stopped and said, God, help me. And he was more open than I was, because I had rebelled. I was like, there is no God. But that got me listening. And then the next week was Father's Day, and Chan Mitchell is the pastor at the church at the Ridge in Blue Ridge, Georgia. Highly suggest checking it out online. They're great, and gosh, Mark and the music there is just incredible. But Chan was preaching, and just about, and another thing, it struck me. I'm a dad, and he was talking about Father's Day and how we should, really be looking up at the blessings that all of our fathers given us. And while I was listening to the sermon, I was listening to Chan, I felt this presence that I had never felt before. And it was almost legitimately like a literal hand on my shoulder. And when I felt that, it was like a movie reel went through my head, and it was all these blessings I had in my life, all these incredible things, the birth of my daughter, the birth of my daughter running to me, my son running to me, getting to live my dream as a wrestler, all these blessings. It was like a movie going on in my head. And I just started bawling. And my wife looked at me and she's like, "What is it?" And I looked at her and said, "I'm so blessed."
We
And
are.
she started bawling. And she started bawling. She goes, "You found him." And it was that, man. And then, like, not to make this be the longest podcast ever.
No, so you're fine, dude.
But
This is
it was
more
like,
important than anything. I love this.
it was like 3 months later. I'm driving back. My son's mom lives in Nashville, where I lived a long time. I was driving back from Nashville and got stuck in a little bit of traffic, and it was like the same thing kind of happened. I was listening to Stephen Furtick on the radio, and the same thing kind of happened. Like, I felt this almost like a touch, and this time a movie reel went through my head, but it was all the things that I had done to hurt other people. And I had heard my whole life, about asking for forgiveness from the Lord, but I had never like really thought about literally doing that until that moment. So, and I don't remember that date, and of course, Father's Day 2 years ago is when I say I was saved, but I feel like that day I saw all those things I'd done to hurt others, and I just said, "God, I don't want to be that person. I'm sorry." And that is the day I feel like that, yes, God saved me on Father's Day a couple years ago, but a couple months after that, when I asked for forgiveness, is when, he didn't just grab my hand and pull me out of the water to save me. At that point, he said, "All right, come with
I'm tearing up over here, Shawn. I honestly am. Thank you for sharing that, because it's I don't want to say similar story. It's been longer for me, but similar story. In the second part of your story, I've had God in my life many years, but he's just been in my life, so I say in my head. And it's till I heard, I don't remember who, because I have a memory of a gnat, many concussions from football and baseball. The same thing of release yourself to what you've done. I'm like, I haven't really done anything bad, until you sit with yourself and think. You're like, this.
Yeah.
In the next week when I went to church, that same warm feeling of just rush came, like during communion, and I'm bawling. And people are like, "What is wrong with Mark?" And I was good. Because I knew exactly how you started this. We chase when we already have so many blessings. We just don't know.
Man, it's still hard. You know what I mean? Like, and that's one thing. Like, if anybody is listening to this, I don't know how many people know who I am, but if anybody is listening to this, like, if you feel like you have given your life to God, and then you still hit those hard times, like, he didn't promise everything to be easy, right?
Right.
And I still struggle so bad. I miss wrestling so bad.
Right.
I do. And I am currently in college, getting my marketing degree, working in business-to-business marketing right now to hone my skills so I can apply them back to wrestling is my goal, and that is my plan. So I miss it. And, and saying that, I'm to say that it's been really hard for me to find who I am outside of being a husband and a father and a follower of Christ, who I am as a man outside of those things without wrestling. And for a while, it's like I was trying to be that without wrestling. And probably February of this year is when I was like, okay, I don't have to be that person without wrestling. Let's make a plan.
Right.
And so I got the plan together. But it's hard. It's still hard. You still, every day, you're like, what am I doing? This is stupid. I'm 42 years old. And, you still do that. But then I was listening. You know who Cliff Connectley is?
I don't.
Oh, man, go find him.
All right.
Yeah. but he was talking about, faith, and it's a discipline. It's not, it's not something that you just do when you feel. It's not a feeling. You don't
No.
feel like, it's like, and he related it to going to the gym. He's like, if you're an athlete, you go to the gym, and you don't take a day off because you don't feel like it. You continue to go, because if you don't go, you don't continue to grow.
Exactly. You skip
And
1 week, it's okay. You skip
Yeah.
2 weeks, it's a habit. Then 3
Yeah.
weeks is not an issue. Then 4
Now
weeks,
it's a
you
lifestyle.
forgot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, we're having Shawn back on to talk about more of his wrestling career. We need to get into the meat and potatoes of this, though, because I want to talk about OVW with you, NWA with you, TNA with you, other stuff. We need to ask you random questions, but we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the meat and potatoes of this. And I don't want to fast forward what we were talking about, because we could start our own podcast about blessings and everything, too, and I'm not joking about that, but let's get to the... Plus, you have time. I don't want to keep you long. Let's get to the second annual Shawn Shultz Futures Tournament, which is this coming Saturday, Red Bank, Tennessee. Everyone knows they should be in those damn seats. Shawn, why was this started? We heard a little bit from T.Y. Sutton, but why? Give us every information you can about this. How are seats going? Is there available at the door? Yada, yada, yada. Because people still need to get their asses there, as Ricky Morton would say.
Yes. Boy, look here. Yeah, man. So Tyler contacted me before the last one, obviously, and just kind of said, "Hey, man, we're thinking about doing this little tournament for guys that are like, 3 to 4 years in or less, and it'd be a futures tournament." I was like, "Oh, that's cool, man." And he was like, "And when I think of you, I think of somebody that always tried to help the young guys." And I was like, "Oh, thanks, man." So I thought he was going to ask me to throw out some names that I thought would be good, And then he was like, "So I wanted to ask your permission if I named it the Shawn Shultz Futures Tournament." And I was like, "Why?" And he said, "Well, man, I just said, you always tried to help everybody." And I was like, "Man, I just Pops Smothers, that's what he did. That's what he told us to do. And that's just what you do. You just grab the next guy." And he's like, "Well, man," he's like, "you did it everywhere you went." And he's like, "So I just would like to do this for you if it would be okay with you." And I was like, "Dude, that's such an honor to me." So that's the premise behind it. So it's guys that are, 4 years or less in, around about that time, still young guys, girls, everybody's welcome in the industry. And the idea is, last year, man, it was such a blast, and everybody did such a great job. And man, the guys were so open to feedback and just conversation, and it was just such a great environment. And last year we were in Chatsworth with the Renegade Championship guys. It was awesome, great little partnership there. This time we're in Chattanooga area at Red Bank with TWE, which I gotta say, Jaden Newman. That's his crew there. Dude, how good is that guy?
Amazing.
That guy is
He's
so
all
good.
over social media and just blowing shit up. He's awesome.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
He's so good. I remember when I first met him, we were in La Follette, Tennessee, where SPCW is now, where Dr. Tom and Kane's school is. I was in the locker room, and I hear somebody yelling in the parking lot. And I'm like, what is happening? I kind of put my head out, and I just see this kid got a hood up and just screaming at these ladies in the parking lot. And I'm like, what is this guy doing? And then a couple of the other guys come over, and they're like, "Oh, this stupid kid's out there yelling at the fans and stuff." And I'm like, "Is he?" They're like, "Yeah, he's out there healing on them." I'm like, "Is he a heel?" And they're like, "Yeah." I was like, "That's awesome."
Right?
They're like, "Oh, yeah, it's really cool." Of course they're trashing him at first, but I thought, because at that time there was probably only, honestly, 30 people coming to that show. They had just opened it up. I was there when they did the ribbon cutting, because they joined the chamber there in the area and all that stuff. So it was brand new. They weren't drawing a big crowd yet. And I went straight over to Matt Bowens and Johnny Jeffries, and I was like, "Hey, man, that guy right there, that you need to encourage him to do that.
Yeah.
It's like, because then people friggin' they'll call their friends and be like, you got to get a load of this douchebag down here.
Right. That's the best way of putting
And
it.
I was like, I'd love that. And he got in the back, and like immediately somebody said something to him, like, oh, yeah, they're yelling at people, you can be blown up for your match or something negative, And he walked past me. I was like, hey, man, what's your name? He said, Jaden. And immediately I was like, because they were asking me if we had any ideas or something I could do. And I was like, maybe we could do a thing where, like, I don't lose for a while and then we have some young guy beat me. And I was like, man, if he gets good heat as a heel and then he comes out and beats me, if I get some heat too, it's perfect. So that was the idea. It never ended up happening. So I've never got a chance to work with him, but I just think he's great. Again, I digress. Sorry, I get off on stories.
No.
But yeah, Saturday, all these guys coming in, man, and they're coming in from all over. Tyler did such a great job putting it together, finding all these guys. He shot me videos of everybody, and it's just so much fun seeing them. And I get to do a seminar before it, and we're actually not even charging for the seminar. We're just asking for at least a $20 donation. Tyler has a charity there in Chattanooga area that we're going to donate to. Just want to be able to give back from this. So anybody in the area wants to come, and hey, you may not learn anything from me. You may know more than me, but we can all just sit around and have fun, loving wrestling together, and we can give some money to a charity. So we're doing that at 3:00. That's from 3 to 5, and then the doors open at 6, I believe. Maybe I'm wrong. And then the show will start shortly after that. I think he's got some prelim matches maybe happening. And the cool thing about the seminar is that there is a vacant spot in the tournament. So I will actually select one of the seminar participants to be in the tournament that night, which is a really fun little thing.
That is a great little twist because one, the crowd doesn't know, the seminar people don't know. It literally is, here could be your ticket, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, so that'd be fun, It'll keep them on their toes, right? Because they'll have to throw something together real quick. I'm going to tell Tyler to put them on first. No, I'm joking. But it's fun. You just got to throw something together when you're not expecting it. That's always a good learning experience.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, there's so many more questions. Shawn, we need to, again, I don't want to keep you long. There's so many more questions. I said we need to do this again in a couple weeks. Maybe then we'll kind of recap the tournament, essentially how you thought it went, and get into more stories. And I mean this wholeheartedly. Throw the wrestling stuff out the window. The other stuff that we talked about God being saved and about churches and everything, I needed that tonight. Sidebar, we've had a rough week of scheduling this, and it's all been my fault. So this is why it was meant to be tonight, Shawn. It really was.
Amen. Yes, it was. I agree.
So, all right. I guess I have one more question for you, though. Okay?
Hit me.
All right. What would be your dream match? You could work with anybody ever. Who, where, and what stipulation would you want?
Oh, man. Gosh. My son, my 14-year-old Cole, the big wrestling fan, we've talked about this, and there's like conditions around each one. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like just for the sake of saying I did it, John Cena. Like any money I made in wrestling the whole time I did it was because that guy took the freaking business on his back and carried it.
Yeah.
So just to be able to be in the ring with that dude and just say I did it, him. Just from like 12-year-old me point of view, like Shawn Michaels, obviously. I think anybody my age would say that. But right now, who I would have my best match with, if I was still rocking and rolling, and it was around the time me and Tony were together, and I was doing the long hair and the robe, and that was still where I was, man, I think I could create some real fun magic with that Colby Carino kid.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the tag team and you guys against the Rock and Roll Express. My eyes just lit up like a teeny bopper back then. I'm like, oh my God, that would be awesome.
I got to work with so many of the guys I idolized. I got to work Bobby Eaton.
Right.
Oh my God. So that was like, okay, did that,
You're Tracy Smothers' boy, which is unbelievable. Like, I saw that you shared stuff with him, but that you shared that story at the beginning. I didn't know that. So you have so much. I started this off by saying you're a legend, and you're like, but there's a tournament named after you for a reason, Shawn. And you said it all in this podcast. But there's so much more to come, because look what you're doing for the youngsters. Thank you. And I mean that as a wrestling fan, as a human being, because you're passing it on like Pops would have, like Ricky Morton's still doing, and a couple other ones that are out there, because I'm going to be that guy. You don't see it much anymore because everybody's got an ego.
Yeah, unfortunately. But I think it's changing, I
Slowly.
think it is changing. I think a lot of guys are good. I think a lot of the guys out there are really good, man. And like, there's so many guys that go on the extra mile and always try to help out, and I see it regularly. Dustin Rhodes is another one, man. Just that guy, just salt of the earth, a person. Like, I always just thought so highly of him, So any of the young guys out there, if I can throw this out to kind of end this around the helping the young guys out kind of notion here. If you ever get a chance to be around Dustin Rhodes, take advantage. If you ever get a chance to be around Ricky Morton, obviously take advantage. If you ever get a chance to be around Booker T, take advantage. If you ever get a chance to be around Dr. Tom Pritchard, sit down, buckle up, take full advantage. Dutch Mantell is still out there. Jeff Jarrett, oh my God. Like, take advantage. There's so many incredible guys that are still out there. So if you get that opportunity, don't be shy, guys. These guys, if you catch them you catch anybody on a bad day, right? But like, don't be afraid to go up and say, hey, I'm a fan. Help.
Right. Yeah. There's a ton out there.
I get all those guys I mentioned would do nothing but their very best to help.
Agreed. Shawn, this has been a blast. It's warmed my heart tonight. And as soon as we say goodbye, we're scheduling part 2 because there's so many more questions, brother.
Thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate it. This has been fun for me.
Hey, this is Baby Doll, your perfect tan. And if you wanted to listen to some wrestling talk, listen to the Can Crushers.
Ladies and gentlemen, it was my honor to have Shawn Shultz come on and talk professional wrestling, a little bit about his career, a lot about Tracy Smothers and everything that he's done with them. Man, how about the story about after first match, jumping in the car, spending 3 weeks with them? Unbelievable. But the greatest story on here, wrestling story, is wrestling in a dump. Unbelievable what Tracy did. Unbelievable that they wrestled in a dump. I've been to dumps. I've been to so many dumps, and it's gross. But they just threw a ring up in a dump, and they had a wrestling match. That's hilarious. Guys, I know we went off track a little bit, but it's been a week. It's been a couple weeks that has been crazy. And just because, not bringing the wall down completely, I really needed Shawn today. And when we both opened up about the Holy Spirit and the Lord and everything, that makes this podcast. That's what Can Crushers is about. You get the stories, you get the real life feels, and it took me to today to be able to connect with Shawn, and it was meant for a reason, so we could both unleash essentially on each other about the love that we have for the Holy Spirit. I'm telling you right now, Shawn's coming back on. We're going to recap this tournament. We're going to talk more about the Shawn Shultz second annual Futures Tournament in recap form, sort of, kind of. Maybe we'll have a group call or something. We hadn't worked everything out yet. Come on. I mean, we just got done doing this, but yeah, Shawn will be back on to talk more about his career. We got some more silly questions for him and everything. Man, I didn't even ask him who he really thought was the main bad guy in the whole Montreal screw job. Once you bring up Brett and Shawn in the same sentence, you have to ask that question, right? I need to know, was it Brett's fault? Was it Shawn's fault? Was it Vince's? Who's the dirty guy in Shawn's eye? We all have our opinions. Everyone knows what's going on with Shawn Shultz, but we need to know what's going on there. Guys, this was an amazing interview. I thoroughly loved it. It's probably, again, I don't vote at the Crushies about my favorite interview each year because they're all my babies, but this one This one's pulling real quick at my heart for so many reasons. Shawn, you're listening to this. Thank you once again, my brother. It meant so much to have you on. I can't wait to talk again. Remember, just because you're trash doesn't mean you can't do great things. It's called a garbage can, not a garbage cannot. Make sure you tell your loved ones you love them, because you never know.